Hey James, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Doug. How are you doing?
I'm really good.
That's good.
Feels like we've done this conversation before.
Maybe once, not twice.
So Commonwealth Gap. What we normally do in these conversations is we start off with news. We talk a little bit about what news is happening over the last 7 days. We'll probably do 14 days because we slacked off last Friday. It was a big night for the Roosters. We needed to win against Souths. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, we are coming to you from Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. And
We sure are.
the team that I'm going to say we love, sorry James, whether it's
Big
true
Roosters
or
fan.
not. Big Roosters fan.
Big Roosters fan.
The Roosters are now into the finals. They beat Souths, which is their traditionally, if it were in New York, it'd be the Subway Series between the New York Yankees and the Mets. They're the traditional rivals that have been for over 100 years. And Roosters came out on top and now into the final series. So it's pretty exciting times.
It is exciting times, unless you're a Rabbitohs supporter.
Unless you're a supporter. There's always next year. First thing that came up and first thing we talk about is the news and what's happened. And then we talk a little bit about a topic that we think is interesting. So first news that came up for me was around CBA and the fact that they've just said that they've slashed their scam losses by 76%, I believe.
It's a big number.
It is.
They don't muck around, Commonwealth Bank.
No. Well, they say they're spending $900 million on AI.
Which is also a big number.
Just a lot of big numbers. And then the other things in the article, I think it was the AFR, could have been the Australian, said there was 86 million events a day. And then they said 4,000 workers were monitoring the AI.
Can we do some quick maths on that?
Well,
Are the returns adding
I
up?
thought we would.
Doug?
I thought we would.
Let's do it.
So the total scam, in the article itself as well, the total scams in across Australia for 2024 were $2 billion. Now that's everywhere. Right? That's everything, not just CBA. And if you add 400 million workers up at an average of $100,000 a worker, which is probably on the low side on an overall cost basis, that's $400 million in wages alone. So we've got $400 million worth of wages monitoring AI that's finding 76% of scams that probably for CBA adds up to maybe a couple of hundred million, maybe 300 million a year.
Yep.
So I'm not sure.
Not really adding up.
I'm not sure how that works.
Got it.
And return on investment is something that certainly keeps popping up as a enterprise problem at the moment.
So, Doug, are we replacing one inefficiency with another potentially, or is this all part of the learning game? A CBA attacking a real problem, potentially not finding the return there, but learning throughout the process on how they'd restructure? Probably a bit of both. I think in the orgs that we're speaking to, we're definitely saying that, and the feedback is the same, that they don't want to replace one inefficiency with another one just because it's wrapped in artificial intelligence. But I do think that you need to kind of experiment to just get some battle scars to learn what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
So it's probably a bit of both, but I wouldn't like to be experimenting with those numbers at stake.
They're big numbers.
Big
Or
numbers.
maybe they're not such big numbers for CBA. It's all relative, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah.
What else came out? So Atlassian...
It's probably worth just touching on the MIT study that you referenced. So the 95% of
Absolutely.
pilots that are failing to deliver meaningful ROI.
Well, it was interesting. I mean, when MIT comes out with something, people generally listen. I mean, especially in terms of anything to do with technology. And it came out and the market really got shocked, right? So here's somebody that we want to trust, an institution we want to trust, and they say 95% of them basically are no value at all in terms of what's happened. There's a lot of people, been a lot of talk. It came out probably 10 days ago now, a little out of our 7-day window. But the thing that was really interesting to me is it hit the markets and then people got really interested in it. And then they started to really look at it and found a few things. One, they really struggled to find it.
Yep.
Like the article was hard to find. And then when they looked at it, they realised that there was, not a lot to it. They didn't really talk about who they spoke to. They didn't talk to a lot of people. There wasn't a lot of facts behind it. It was sort of a whole lot of opinions from different people. And I suppose when you come out of it, what does that mean and what can we take from it? Well, there was still 95% of people said that they'd got no value, right? It was probably a little bit sales heavy, so probably the salespeople were a little bit negative on it altogether as well. So other news, anything else that you saw that was piqued your interest?
No, look, I was interested in the MIT study and I think there were some spooked characters. I had a look at some of the earning announcements to just see who's attributing any growth to artificial intelligence, because 95% is a big number in the theme of big numbers.
Yes.
It's floating around 80%, I think, for the last 12 months. And then for MIT to come out and say 95%, I think a lot of people are saying, is there really value in all this spend that's going on? But looking at the earning results, it sounds like it seems as though there's just a concentration. So there are some bigger organisations that are attributing some of their growth to AI initiatives. So Unilever came out optimising their supply chain. Yum Foods, Pizza Hut and KFC saying that the ability to leverage artificial intelligence through their customer interactions is driving more growth. So I think the takeaway for that is really that if you're kind of mucking about with artificial intelligence with no clear strategy, then probably 95% are going to fail. But I think the proof points are there to demonstrate that if you're serious about it, you put the right thinking behind and you cover the blockers that you've discussed.
I'll tell you who is making some money in this. So Oracle came out a couple of days ago.
Adobe.
Lifted their price
by
25%. I mean, this is nearly $500 billion. Is that right? Yeah, it is $500 billion. That's 12 zeros, James. Do you know that? It's 12 zeros in a tree.
I'm sure I could have figured that out.
So
I didn't have that on the top of my head.
$500 billion business, and it lifts by over 25%, I think, on the day. Yeah. I mean, that was based on contracts that are going to be worth multiple hundreds of billions of dollars that are sort of being pre-sold already. So there's a
divide going on.
Amazing numbers out there of just these things that are going crazy. I mean, put that in perspective. If we said 900 million was a big number, that's 1/500th of if we said 25% on a 500 million, so that's over 100 million, over 100 billion in growth. So less than 1% they're spending on. And then one announcement, Oracle's value goes up by 100 times that. I mean, it's hard to sort of wrap your head around from my perspective, at least. Hopefully we're not confusing everybody out there. What else? Atlassian. So Atlassian invests heavily in an AI browser acquisition. So what's an AI browser? It's one that can do a couple of things, really. Sort of scan a web page while you're on it. Glean the information. I'll talk about Glean in a second. Glean the information off the web page and give you a summary of it or tell you what's going on. It can also then, like Google has these engines in the background that actually scan and scrape the web in the background, and so that's another thing that these things can do to actually help you either read what's happening in your browser and then potentially write to it. So it could book you a ticket or those sort of things. So that sort of world is something that's been pretty exciting. Atlassian obviously thinks it's pretty exciting. And as I said, I was going to talk a little bit about Glean. Glean is a product that I came across my desk yesterday, it's pretty cool. It's not exactly sure who's created it, but I think it's a couple of Googlers got together, ex-Googlers, left there, and they've taken AI, they've taken the search engine, they've taken the ability to scrape websites and pull data from either other sites, like let's say it's Dropbox or it's Salesforce or whatever it is, pull that all in, and or you can tell it websites to go and look for and find data, and then it pulls it all in, it sticks it in your own little search index, if that makes sense. So it's a knowledge graph they spoke about, I think, so that you could then find that quicker and easier and be able to then do a little bit more than what you can do with Copilot, I would say, or with ChatGPT right now, which is start to create your own little workflows off the back of it, it looked pretty cool. I don't know, again, whether business users are going to spend the time or care and whether there's an ROI there, but the things you could do seem to be, a little bit like, maybe I call it Copilot Plus or ChatGPT Plus today and see what happens tomorrow, but that's sort of where it's going.
Yeah. Look, if Atlassian are taking a large position in a similar type of solution, you'd think that there's some decent thought that's gone into it. There's some value there, right? Where do you think that comes from? Like the diffusion of that technology into a browser as opposed to a chatbot or an agent? Is that, is this all about trying to get people to work in experiences that they're used to, they prefer to?
I think that's exactly it. I think we all spend a lot of time in browsers, and that's where this all has to happen. And, potentially constraining you to other things and other interfaces is a little hard and probably won't work. But if you can, help me with AI where I work and where I am every day, then, potentially that's really going to fit really well. And maybe the humans that we spoke about earlier that, will generally push against AI because they're worried about losing their jobs. Maybe they'll say, okay, well, I can understand how this can help me, and it can't replace my job because I still need to use the browser.
Well, it starts to become a bit subconscious, right? You don't even realise you're using the tool set.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, good word.
Yep.
Right.
Another interesting news topic was around SME adoption and the responsible AI gap. And it talks to really that SMEs are starting to use artificial intelligence more frequently. There's some data that suggests that. But it's becoming increasingly challenging for them to abide by this new governance structure that's been put in place. So again, are we making it hard for smaller companies to actually utilise and leverage and get the value out of the technology if they've got to abide by all these other principles?
Yeah, got it. Because there's in Australia at least, we were talking about an AI Act, and very similar to what's happened in Europe or what's going through or gone through in Europe and UK and in Canada, and less so in the US. So the US basically abandoned, it seems, any regulation at all, to your point. And Australia is sort of standing now in no man's land between, do we follow what the US does and do nothing, or do we follow more what Europe and UK, et cetera, is doing? And it's really divided. The Labor Party's even divided on it, on the policy itself, let alone everybody else around it. There's some interesting places that Australia finds itself, but I tell you what's consistent always is we can't seem to make a decision. So Australia,
I was going to say we will get there,
maybe.
But by the time the wave's passed.
Yeah, somebody else made the decision for us around the world, so why don't we follow it?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, we can't. Let's not bag Australia.
We do love Aussies.
Australia. We do love
and
Aussies.
the
We
roosters.
love living here. It's a beautiful day today.
Correct.
It's finally stopped raining.
Yes.
In Sydney.
Yes.
Right. Another one that I thought was pretty interesting. I don't know about you, James, but did you know that Apple released the iPhone 17?
I didn't until you told me at the crack of dawn yesterday when I walked in the office.
Isn't it interesting? It used to be like a Tuesday that I used to dial into and watch, but it sort of just doesn't happen. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
There was a period of time there I thought, I wonder what's coming out next.
Yeah.
That was probably, a while ago, but now, and remember people used to queue up in front of the stores?
They've just it seems like they've
missed it.
We love Apple, but have they run out of...
One of people to sell to?
Maybe.
Well, because we've all got one.
And also just things to sell. Like they're repackaging the same features and saying, hey, look at this.
Well, that was one of the things. I mean, last year I did see a replay of the show, and Apple Intelligence was mentioned. That was the news article, how many times people had said the word Apple Intelligence in the thing. Apparently, I haven't seen it, but apparently it was never said. In fact, they didn't even talk about it.
Interesting.
About the only thing you could pick up that they were doing anything with AI at all was that they'd put a processor in there that had the word neuro or something in it that was sort of hinting towards, and they said something like the processor in the 17 is going to be like MacBook Pro powered. So now you've got a MacBook Pro in your iPhone. Don't know what that's going to do for the battery, but we'll find out.
If it's anything like mine, probably not going to be very good.
It won't be great.
Yes. So I'm interested in that though. So moving away from what they know is kind of a surefire way to get people excited, referencing Apple Intelligence, and that would have been a very intentional move. Is that because they're feeling like there's a bit of a hype bubble that's just kind of people are going, I've already heard this before, and people are starting to move away from AI first and trying to just...
I think they don't have an answer.
Or they just don't, yeah, okay.
I mean, there's a Google conversation going on.
Yeah.
No, well, there's I don't know who they're partnering with. They can't create their own, it seems, at the moment. And so last year they partnered with OpenAI to do it. And then there's supposedly a Google collaboration going on, partnership between Apple and Google. Once again, haven't seen it. So I just don't think they have an answer.
Yeah, okay.
And with everything that's happening in the US around trade and tariffs and Apple trying to work out what to do with all its manufacturing in China and then getting a product back into the US to sell. We'll see.
Yep.
What else was on this list that was sort of exciting?
The Future Fund's AI focus boosts returns. So our sovereign wealth fund attributes part of its 2025 returns to AI-adjacent infrastructure, cloud and data centres. That's an interesting one, and it's more on the investment front. I don't know really whether that's going to mean anything to the everyday punter, but I suppose it demonstrates what you were talking about with Oracle. So the investments in that type of software and technology is great because there's a lot of demand for it.
Yes.
Is that converting down into, your SMEs and the people's using the tool?
Yeah.
Not sure.
Yeah, the ultra-rich tech companies and tech bros are getting ultra rich.
Because of the speculation that the technology is going to be transformative, but I think there's still a gap between converting that to measurable efficiency.
Yeah, look, it's we'll see. I mean, the other part there that isn't spoken about as much in Australia, but certainly you can see what's happening with the amount of oil that's being tried to be found again in the US and going back to gas and fossil fuels, coal, etc. And really trying to get nuclear going in the US is because the lack of power to power all these data centers, if we take this to the extreme and everybody's got AI everywhere, is so large that the data center piece is sort of almost the first step of this. Once they really start building that out, the amount of power you're going to need and what we need to do in Australia to do it, in terms of sort of real infrastructure investment, which would be exciting to see, if we could actually get that going. Anyway, all right, shall we shift gears a little bit into the topic that we sort of have been dancing around a little bit, which is, MIT's 95% failure or lack of business return or business value. Mm-hmm. What are you seeing in the market, James, around that? When you're out there all the time talking to customers, talking to large and medium-sized customers. What are you hearing from them about what they're worried about and, obviously finding value like that and seeing a 95% failure figure?
Yep.
What are you hearing?
So there's obviously an overwhelm of information. So all of the things that we just covered are reasons that executives and then probably that middle layer of management are going, I actually don't know where to start. We're seeing that a lot of the organisations that I'm talking to are operating at two speeds at the moment. They've got their strategic layer. So how do we make sure that we've got the right governance structures in place? How do we build capability in the right areas? How do we redefine our workflows and our customer journeys? Then you still got to run your business. So you've got your BAU, but your more tactical initiatives. That's where we're seeing these pilots that are failing. And I think the takeaway is that there's still a disconnect between the strategic stuff that's going on. So building out your capability at an executive level and figuring out where you need to build your IT capability.
Yep.
But then not having that kind of trickle down into your skilling and having your ground up training so that people are aware.
Yep.
So I think the disconnect between those two speeds are probably big and no different to any other transformation that you see, right?
It's the same old shit again, right?
All over again,
Yep.
but probably just with a greater spotlight.
Yeah.
So people are saying, hey, AI is everywhere. What are we doing about it? Oh, that didn't work. So you know what I mean? So the numbers are damning. There's a lot of noise and there's still
So what
disconnect.
you're saying in the last sort of 10 years that we've seen this happening before, people weren't turning around and saying, you must put in a new ERP. Is that right? The board wasn't saying we definitely need ERPs.
Well, I don't know
Or
why, because
CRM
ERPs are so exciting. Just ask, any CFO. Yeah. But yeah, so that's one of the things that we're seeing. And I think probably the buying behaviour as well. So on that BAU front, so there's transformation and BAU. There's always been kind of two threads that need to run in tangent. But there is probably a disconnect between the buyers that have real urgent kind of I must fix now problems and being able to attribute that to any type of AI solution. So it's typically, I might need to reorg or restructure or throw more bodies at the problem. And the AI, I don't think there's enough kind of trust or confidence that a solution that's baked in AI is really going to solve that problem.
Yep.
So probably getting there is all about incremental gains. So how do you dip your toe in the water? So you've got that strategic lens, but hey, we might pilot this with a business unit that's actually ready to go and just deliver some incremental change and movement and get that groundswell, the natural pull of the organisation to want the solution. Yeah.
Yeah, look, so specifically on the return on investment side, why do you think, if you're on this incremental side, why do you, we hear a lot of people say that their pilots are failing, right? And they're failing because the business value doesn't come out. I mean, I've got one hypothesis, and we're seeing it a lot in the clients we've got. And in fact, even from an Adaptivate perspective, which is a consulting firm in Australia that we work with, their big focus is that they have this concept of a week zero, that they won't get out of an AI pilot unless they've ticked all the boxes on a number of things. One of them is we need to be able to measure now whatever the thing is we're trying to improve, so that we can actually measure it after we've spent And I also say it needs to be done in less than 12 weeks. So whatever we're doing needs to be a pilot that we can measure at the start and measure at the end and actually tell that it's changed. They have a whole checklist of things they look at. So, can the data that we need for this AI pilot, is it there? Can we access it? And they'll say, yeah, it's in the ERP system. Yeah, no, it needs to get out of the ERP system. It also needs to be available for us to be able to use without us having to get access and security access to your systems. So they're trying to remove all the things that's going to slow you down or slow a group down. We've gone into places where it's taken us 6 weeks to get security access, if you remember those days. And we need to be able to sort of get past that. They need to understand who's involved. They need to understand things like leaders. They turn around and they say, which leader is actually going to drive this? And I'm not saying sort of sign the check. I'm saying stand up in front of the team and say, this is important and I'm using it and you should be using it as well. It's important for our business and for yourselves to learn these capabilities and skill up. Because if they don't, and equally, like who is working and what teams are we working with and how are we explaining to the people in these teams that this AI is not going to replace their job. It's not going to replace them. It's going to help them, augment them, and they can lift to a level above it. We talk a lot, we've spoken a lot about this concept of AI needing to be a calculator, right? Like we need to turn it into, nobody wants to do long division anymore, here's a calculator. Nobody wants to, do that tedious, boring task that we spend hours doing. Let's see if we can get AI to do it. And that's where it starts to augment and push people into a higher level where they can spend more time thinking on different things. So this checklist of things, and I haven't gone through it very well, but this checklist of things that Adaptivate uses in week 0, they don't get out of week 0 until everybody agrees to it. And it's sort of a good way to start, I think, to start addressing that. It's early days for them. They've only been doing it for the last 6 months, but it certainly gives them a little bit of a better perspective on how to make sure that these projects turn out well, so then you can scale it. Because a pilot is not what the end game is, right? You don't get business return on a pilot. You get business return ultimately across scaling and across the organisation. Yep.
So I would agree wholeheartedly. So I think that, and that kind of makes sense with the news articles that we covered, but that transformational project hygiene really is like table stakes almost. And it's surprising that people aren't there yet, but it makes sense if Unilever and Walmart and Yum Brands, all these large organisations who've got that kind of PMO, that maturity in transformation, are starting off with, why are we doing this? Let's link it to some success measures, and let's make sure that unless we do that and we're fully aligned, then let's not move out of pilot. I would say that there's also a few other kind of blockers at the moment that I think we're pretty aligned on. So the news article about Atlassian's investment around product design. So if you're baking the artificial intelligence or the tool natively in an experience that someone's used to, it's much easier to utilise. If you hand someone over a point solution that they've got to kind of skill up on and learn to use, it's probably going to fall over quite fast. So how do you bring it, that new technology into, someone's existing day so that it's almost a subconscious kind of action? And then the last one is around the skilling and training, which we always keep hammering. So you need to make sure that, people are either having that experience natively, so it's really easy and intuitive to use, or that you're kind of augmenting that transformation with some type of really clear training initiative. And Microsoft, our partners, are obviously doubling and tripling and quadrupling down on that, understanding that skilling is going to be one of the core kind of enablers for us to use some of the technology.
All right. I don't know. That's probably us for today, yeah?
I think so.
Thank you very much, everybody. Hopefully that was useful. Be back here again in a week's time talking about the last week's worth of information. What's newsworthy from our perspective, whether it's newsworthy actually or not, we'll find out. And then we'll talk about a bit of a topic. Thanks very much. Have a great weekend and go the Roosters.
And the Roosters win we'll be talking about too.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that next week.
Yeah.